Girl math is knowing that kids cost on average $21,000 a year or $240,000 over 18 years. So if I don't have a kid, I'm making $20,000 a year and I have a free $240,000 in my pocket. Basically, everything I do is free because I don't have a kid.
I want a kid. And then I realized that in this economy, I can't afford a kid.
As much as having children, a wife, husband is a part of a full human experience, if you don't have that right now, then just be thankful for that.
Some people are saying, if I have a kid, if I have 2 kids, I'm going to be living paycheck to paycheck or like not even making it paycheck to paycheck. And some people are saying, if I have a kid, if I have more than 1 kid, I'm never going to be able to go on vacation. I'm never going to be able to get takeout. I'm never going to feel not stressed about finances.
It's official. I am not having children unless I can afford to raise them with help.
I just don't think that you can raise an entire generation of people beating it into our heads to not have kids if we can't afford it, and then act like we are selfish when we start having no kids or fewer kids, when daycare is 20 grand a month, when our student loans are hundreds of dollars a month into our 30s and 40s, when apartments are 2 grand, when houses are $400,000 for a house that you don't even want to raise a family in. Like, what are you talking about? And it is very much a spectrum of what people are deciding makes it unaffordable to have kids. Some people are saying, if I have a kid, if I have 2 kids, I'm going to be living paycheck to paycheck or like not even making it paycheck to paycheck. And some people are saying, if I have a kid, if I have more than 1 kid, I'm never going to be able to go on vacation. I'm never going to be able to get takeout. I'm never going to feel not stressed about finances. And I hate this sentiment of like, oh, you won't have 2-3 kids. You think you had it worse than your grandma did, which like you're saying we're selfish. You're saying we have too high of expectations for what our standard of living should be with or without kids. But first of all, my grandma didn't have birth control. Like, my grandma had 6 kids. You ask her today, she will straight up tell you, I didn't want to have all those kids. Like, there was very little I could do about it. My grandma raised 6 kids on 1 income, her husband's income, and by all accounts, they weren't in poverty, but they were clinging to the middle class. In today's time, if you're raising a family on 1 income, you can maybe have 1 kid and be clinging to the middle class. And yes,
so I want to touch on a couple of things she said so far because these are really close to home. I think I've said this in other videos before. I have someone really close to me in the family who has a kid and they have 1 kid. And, you know, we ask all the time, are you going to have more kids? And they say, I don't know. It's very expensive. We don't know if we can afford to have another kid. And I always say to them, this is a single childless man saying this to them, so they take it with a grain of salt, I'm sure. I say, hey, if you want more kids, don't let not being able to really, don't let money hold you back from having another human being that you're willing to love and that'll bring you joy you can raise. And I say the same thing, you know, people back in the day had many kids and they made it work, even if they didn't have a lot of money. And similar to that, my dad always gets on me about how I need to have a kid because I don't have one yet, and he's an immigrant and he came here and he sacrificed and he suffered for his family. He has 4 kids, including me. And so he's always on me about when am I gonna have one. And, you know, I get where he's coming from because he came here, he struggled, he made it work, right? He didn't have the most money, or my mom, and they both worked full-time jobs, multiple jobs to raise us and to give us a better life. And we all went to college, we all have better standards of living than they did. So I get where he's coming from. So to them, it's like I'm being very selfish for not having a kid and being older than they were when they started having kids. So I get where they're coming from. At the same time, it is different now. The times we live in are different now to an extent. Like she said, her grandmother was scraping to hang on to the middle class with, what, she say 6 kids, which is, yeah. So, but now for people in my generation, 1 kid, max 2 kids, you're scraping to hang on to the so-called middle class, if that even exists.
Yes, I think in general, people's like expectations for their standard of living, for what their lives are going to be like, have risen, which is that not the point of civilization, for things to get better for people? Like, I think people are just done with like feeling like I am here to struggle. I'm not here to struggle. And people in the middle class are incredibly motivated to stay in the middle class in whatever way we can. And we can't not pay our student loans. We can't not have a roof over our heads. We can't not save for retirement, which is, I mean, we can not save for retirement, but we're supposed to, and it's all our responsibility now. We don't have pensions like my grandparents did. So the only thing that we can really do now to maintain a standard of living that seems worth living to us is to have fewer kids or to have no kids. And now we have control over that. They're trying to take it away. But like, of course, people are going to decide to have fewer kids.
Okay, so there's a distinction between fewer kids and no kids, okay? If you wanna have absolutely no kids, that's one thing. If you wanna have maybe 1 or 2 versus 6, that's another, right? And obviously as standard of living increases, you tend to have fewer kids. That's been the same for a long time. That's why you see people that live in more impoverished areas, or maybe they live out in more rural areas or in other countries where it's less, maybe it's more industrial, or maybe it's more agricultural versus post-industrial or information age like we're in now. You're gonna see that they tend to have more kids. They have more kids to work the farm. They have more kids to take care of, things that go on in the land, versus now where we're in these, I guess it depends if you live in a developed nation, let's say, especially the US, and you live on any coast in a major city and you make a good amount of money or decent money, you're probably gonna have fewer kids. So I will say that's a difference. Now the issue does become where people just decide to stop having kids altogether at a large scale. Then you start to have the issue of we don't have enough kids to meet the replacement rate, i.e. what's going on in Japan right now. They're having a very, very older aging population with no one to take care of them. And because no one's having kids, there's no one to feed into the system to pay for money for social services. So it's gonna become an issue now in the future because there's not enough people to replace people in the workforce.
As an elder millennial with no children, no girlfriend, I haven't even been on a date in months. Aww. I'm not gonna lie, it gets really lonely. But the way the economy is going right now, it's probably what's best. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. My job just had its first ever layoffs. And my thing is, what if these people have families, children that's dependent on them? A lot of us are upset right now, like, I can't get home. No girl wants to date me. I ain't got no kid. Good. Because if you had a mortgage right now, you would be in shambles. I know a lot of people right now, they foreclosing. And they calling mom, they calling dad, and they trying to go back home. As much as having children, a wife, husband is a part of a full human experience, if you don't have that right now, then just be thankful for that. Because imagine if somebody was asking you this. Let me get some V-Bucks. Let me get some Robux. Let's go to McDonald's. You don't need that in your life. You don't. Or if somebody was asking you this. I know you just lost your job, but that don't mean you don't have to take me nowhere. Let's go out the country. How we gonna do that? We don't got no money. Credit card.
Okay, so I can definitely attest to the fact that dating is expensive, having a girlfriend is expensive, and I'm not saying that it's not expensive to have a boyfriend. I'm just saying that as a guy who dates women, it is expensive to have a girlfriend. But right now I'm like this guy, I'm single, childless, and I'm not an elder millennial. I'm actually a younger millennial, technically zennial as you want to call it, at the beginning of that. Anyways, he's spot on. It's expensive. Does that mean you shouldn't have kids? Does that mean you shouldn't have a girlfriend or a wife or a spouse or a boyfriend or a husband? Not really. If anything, you could probably combine resources and get a little bit further than you will if you're single. And you insulate yourself, so let's say one of you loses your job, at least you have the other person to fall back on, because hopefully both of you don't lose your job at the same time. I think there are pros and cons to everything, but what he's saying makes sense. Like sometimes if you're with the wrong person, they might cause you to spend money you don't have, i.e. go into debt for things you don't need to do at that time, i.e. go on vacation when you just lost your job. While I don't necessarily agree that being single and childless is the only thing saving you right now, I will say that probably does help, unfortunately.
It's official. I am not having children unless I can afford to raise them with help. And I know that that's a controversial statement, but let me just tell you what happened. I was on the way up to my apartment. I was minding my own business. It was just me and this probably like mid-30s guy in the elevator. Doors open and this couple walks in and they have 3 young kids. They're all like bopping around, right? Really high energy. And I look down at the kids and I smile because I think it's cute. I think it's funny, right? The guy
3 is about 2.5 too many for me personally, but I digress.
Who I'm standing next to looks at me and goes, "You don't have kids." Doesn't say it as a question, he says it as a statement. I said, "How did you know that?" He goes, "Because you're looking at those kids like they're a blessing." And I said, "Well, they are blessings." And then the father that just walked in with all the children, he looks at me, he goes, "They're a blessing to a point." And this is in front of his wife and kids. And then the guy that was with me in the elevator initially, he goes, "Yeah, I have 2 young kids and my wife is at home and she has help and it's still hard." After that conversation, that was probably the best form of birth control that there is, because I'm scared now. I'm scared shitless. Those were 2 grown working adult fathers being like, don't do it unless you have help. I'm like, okay.
Okay, so she's taking this to a whole nother level, a whole nother realm. Not only is she saying she's not gonna have kids because she can't afford them, unless she can afford them, she's saying she's not gonna have kids unless she can afford to have help with those kids, i.e. like a nanny. Now listen, for most of us, that's not even a consideration to have a nanny, okay? That seems like a Carlton Banks, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air type thing to do, or Beverly Hills type thing to do. To have a nanny, to have in-home care seems like, maybe I'm off. I don't have kids, I don't know, maybe I'm off, but people complain about daycare, let alone having someone in the house to help you with just the regular things with life. So that to me is a little bit crazy. But I think the fathers in the elevator were talking more about how raising kids can be difficult. It's a very beautiful thing and they love their kids and all that good stuff, but it's very difficult and very time consuming and blah, blah, blah. I get that. That's different than not being able to afford them. So I think this is a bit different.
I want a kid. And then I realized that in this economy, I can't afford a kid, especially at this age. Like, I'm sure people have kids, but I don't think I can financially afford kids in this economy, especially since I'm still not done with my education. And it's just so hard, though, to fight the maternal instinct, because I feel like I have such a strong maternal instinct, and a lot of people are like, just fight it. But I'm like, But on a serious note, I did know I wanted kids around when I was like 6, because that's when I started first babysitting. And at my old church, I really, 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 really liked kids, and kids really seemed to like me. And I preferred hanging out with kids than like the toxic people at my church. So I'm kind of messed up. But in order to have kids, you need to have good men. So with this economy and the dating market, I don't think I'm gonna have a kid. And if I do, it's gonna be me as a single parent.
So that's unfortunate. She's already planning to be a single parent, so she's going into the situation with the glass half empty, so she's probably gonna have a self-fulfilling prophecy, so that's great. But nonetheless, there's the thing. She wants to have a kid, and here's the thing. A lot of people are now having kids at an older age. So she seems like she's fairly young. She's still in school, she said, so her mindset might change a bit. I'm not saying that every woman wants children, but she's saying that she wants children. And so typically what I see is that as you get a bit older, that's when you start to change your mind a bit. For me personally, I've never been one to have a really strong drive to even want kids. And so that's why it makes the situation for me a little more difficult, because I feel sometimes that I want to have them just to keep the lineage going. And unfortunately, a part of me feels like I want to have them to make people around me happy, which is a terrible reason to have them, versus that drive to want them. But I think that the older I get, the more I do find myself wanting them. So I think for her, hopefully things change. She graduates school, she gets a decent income, and she meets someone, a good man, who she can see being a good husband and a good father, and she goes that route. But she made 2 good points. One is the finances of it, and one is the dating pool. And it does seem like a lot of people now are more selfish. I'll be honest. That's what I'm sounding like my father now. And listen, no shame to them, because I guess that's me too. I'm more selfish. I think about myself first. I don't really want to necessarily suffer for a kid, which sounds very selfish. But really in my mind, what I think of it is that, okay, I want to establish myself first to a certain degree before I have a kid. And then you tell people that, like, you'll never be ready for a kid. You're never gonna feel established enough. You're never gonna feel like you have enough money. So I get all that too. But I do think there's something to be said about at least getting to a point where you feel whatever that is to you. It's different for everybody. For me, that's no debt. I've already achieved that. For me, that's gonna be having a certain level of assets. Not there yet, getting there. For me, that's gonna be having a certain level of income, which I'm not there yet, right? And so I'll keep delaying it, and who knows? So I get where she's coming from. And yeah, I think that a lot of people are purposely choosing to forego having children specifically for a financial reason. Number one. Number two, maybe because it's more of I want to live my best life and be kind of selfish, at least when they're younger. And number three is kind of fear of the economy, fear of globally what's going on in the world, which, let's be honest, the world's always been a kind of crazy place. So nothing's really changed. So, I mean, that's not really necessarily a good reason not to have kids, but can't judge people for their own personal reasons. Well, I thought I'd pop this article in here really quickly to keep the conversation going. And apparently the number one reason people are choosing not to have kids is not even financial reasons. The top 2 reasons are actually wanting to focus on other things, which i.e. equals probably being selfish, as we talked about earlier. And number 2 is because of the concerns about the state of the world, which is what I just touched upon, about how people are afraid about wars and conflicts and hatred and global warming and all these other things. And, you know, the world's always been crazy, like I said. But those are the top 2 reasons. Let's see where finances falls. So according to this, parenthood has gotten even more expensive in the last couple of decades. Surprise, surprise. So it's saying that daycare has gone up about 263%, which is not a surprise. I did a video on that people did not seem to like, but that's not shocking. And now they're saying to raise a child from 0 to age 18 in the year 2023 was $330,000. But with that being said, they're saying that just 36% of childless adults under 50 say they couldn't afford to raise a child. So not as high as the first two, obviously, and even smaller, 12% of adults over 50, which makes sense. Over 50, you tend to probably have a little bit more money. They're saying that finance was the reason why they chose not to have children. With that being said, if you made this fun video, I really appreciate you. Please feel free to give the video a like and to subscribe if you feel so inclined, because I really appreciate it. And the YouTube algorithm will also appreciate it. And until next time, make smart financial decisions.